And our special guest on Absolutely Famous today is Western Force Super Rugby Club CEO Tony Lewis. Tony enjoyed a very successful stint prior to moving to Perth with the mighty Tasman Mako in New Zealand, presiding as CEO over an era where New Zealand's newest union rose to the top ranked province in the country. And Tony was also a very good rugby player himself, a wing for the Otago team back in the 1980s. Tony, welcome to Absolutely Famous. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Pleasure, John. Looking forward to it.
Well, you've got a bit of history in Western Australia, haven't you? You played for the state back in the mid-80s.
Yeah, look, I was on my way to London, backpacking from New Zealand to London. Happened to stop here to watch the America's Cup, and had played a bit of rugby. And in that time, playing a bit of rugby, lucky enough to play for Western Australia against London Scottish and Middlesex. So thoroughly enjoyed that opportunity, but it made me even more determined that my body was falling apart. Originally, I left playing for Otago at the age of 24. I'd had 6 years in the Otago team, and my body was just gone.
Yeah, well, of course, I saw you score a pretty good try against the mighty Auckland team of the mid-80s. That was a hell of a team, the Auckland side back then.
Yeah, that was in 1986, and I was marking Terry Wright, and in my humble opinion, I thought that I was equal to him, and so he made the All Black team go to France that year. I didn't, and I took that as a pretty good idea that I was never going to be good enough to be an All Black. And at the same time, Craig Green was moving from the second five out to the left wing. So I decided that after playing for Otago for a number of years, my body was literally just too small for the rigours of first class rugby. I think I started playing for Otago at 68 kgs, and I got up to 85 by the time I retired. But you just at the age of 24, I used to struggle to get out of bed. And simple, physics said that it was never going to last too long.
I think a wise decision. Tony, you've been in Western Australia. You've well and truly got your feet under the table now. You did some amazing things leading the Tasman Rugby Union. Have you taken several of those plans with you to Western Australia?
Yeah, I've taken one plan, and that's winning. Okay, and I think that's the key. I think Tasman, when I got there, we were happy coming second. I think we were very, very fortunate in the short time I started that Kieran and Leon established a winning culture in the championship, and then we're able to take that on into the premiership by quickly working out that to win you had to have depth in your squad, and we didn't. When we beat Hawke's Bay in the championship final, I said to Kieran and Leon after the game, tell me something you noticed about the reserves, and we didn't use the reserves because they weren't confident in that. So it was to build the depth, and from the concept of winning, there is only one way of building depth, and that's to grow your own talent. Whether you recruit them at the age of 17, 18, or whether you take them through the school system and then into your academy. And we work very hard in that space in Tasman with Chris Goodman and the Crusader group. And I think, with the fact that last year we had 8 All Blacks in that group, I think there's more than 30-odd super players. So I think the winning is the key, and the only way I can see winning is if you have an academy structure that is the best in the land. So on that note, have taken that over here. We need to get our academy right, and to assist us in that way, Chris Goodman, who was with the Crusader Academy in Tasman, he's now working for the Force, and we're investing a lot of money into developing our own talent, both born and bred WA players or young players out of school. So we have 25 players in our academy program as we speak. So that's probably the one thing. And then the second thing is coaches, the best coaches. I just look back to Tasman. We had Kieran, who trained Leon. We had Leon, who trained Andrew Goodman and Clark Dermody and Shane Christie. And that's the sequence we need to do. So you're growing your own coaches. I've got no doubt in my mind that Simon Cron will lead leave the force with a number of coaches who could easily become head coach in time. He's hit the ground running. He's made a massive impact already. So those are the two things: a functioning, high-performing coaching team and getting the academy structure right. They're the two things that I think I have brought here and need there. The one thing we have to do is also make sure that rugby in the West is growing, and that's one of the key attributes Andrew and Nicola for Forest are very keen on.
Yeah, it's pretty handy having the Forests on board. Financially, they'll back you to the hilt, no doubt, but it comes with conditions that you have to perform.
Yeah, you have to win. So we've had a 2 years, I would be 2 years into the role. First year, the first 18 months, you inherit quite a lot and you work your way through it. Very lucky that Matt Hodgson had been in here in the high performance space and is a good ally to what we're trying to achieve. But you can't just spend people's money and think you're going to have success. Well, what you've got to do is grow our own talents. And with the academy under Matt's leadership with Chris Goodman, I've got no doubt that that'll give us and the Forest family great joy over the next 3 or 4 years.
Of course, team culture is everything, isn't it? The culture within the club. Is that something that needed to be rebuilt? I mean, you got booted out of the competition ridiculously, in my opinion, for a couple of years. But is that you getting that part sorted?
Look, I think everything happens for a reason, and I probably wouldn't be sitting here now talking to you as chief executive of the Western Force if they hadn't been. So I think it gave us the opportunity to work out how important rugby was in WA. I think it gave us the opportunity to work out how we can align with the values that Andrew and Nicola hold dear, integrity, generating new ideas. That the family is important and how to run a successful organisation. So I think that's all helped. I think the desire to want to succeed, but from a cultural perspective, we work pretty hard on a strategic plan, which is to win and to connect with our community, and we want to be the leading force. And I believe those three sort of phrases, when you've got a head coach of the calibre of Simon Cron, who will be driving his own team culture that the front office will feed off and everyone else will feed off, will set us up for a hell of a good 24, 25, 26 years. 23 will be a really interesting year for us. I'm hoping that we're 3 from 3 at the start of the season, and then we head over to New Zealand, where I think we should be able to pick up a win, which would be great. So we suddenly come home with 4 home games and real opportunity to be in the semi-finals, the quarterfinals, and the finals.
Sorry, I got interrupted there. Yeah.
Yep.
Is it more difficult to attract players to Western Australia than it is, if you're working over the East, where the traditional powers have been?
Oh, look, it's much more difficult. So the simple thing is we're governed by contract levels that are consistent and fair across the board. So you may be signing a young player on a ETS or a Tier 1 academy spot, and you could be paying them $40,000. You're living in Sydney, $40,000 is a lot of money if you're living at home with mum and dad. If you're coming over here, it doesn't go too far. So it's very, very difficult. I think also the other difficult part is that they're the thoroughbreds of the production line, Queensland and New South Wales. And so their first loyalty is always going to be those states because that's who they play for. So what we've tried to do is really concentrate on a number of simple things. Have a clear pathway for the players. See that they can see there's an opportunity to make the Western Force team. So those two things, a pathway through the academy. So we academy Tier 3, Tier 2 and Tier 1. Tier 1 are full-time, Tier 3 and Tier 2 they're working or studying. So there's a clear pathway that way. And then there's an opportunity to make the Western Force team. And they can see that opportunity could be 1 year, 2 years or 3 years, depending on your position. So if we get that right, then we believe the people will come. And then the key piece of the jigsaw is the quality of the coaching. And if a player and the parents can see that those three pieces of the jigsaw fit, then yes, they will be attracted to here, but it is hard work.
Yeah, from what I've seen in the last couple of years with the Australian-New Zealand competition, is the Aussies will keep up for a lot of the game, and then their skill level and intensity just drops off at the wrong time, and the score blows out pretty quickly. Do you see that as one of the issues with the Aussie teams at the moment?
No, I think I've sort of got a completely different view on it. I think that the Australian players are equally as talented as the New Zealand players. I believe they haven't played enough games of rugby. So if I look back and look at some of the players, so let's take a David Havili as an 18-year-old. He's playing Tasman under-19. He's playing full season of club rugby, which is probably 18 games. Tasman under-19, which is probably another 6 games. So he's at 25 games of high-class rugby. And then he'll probably get a couple of games for Tasman B. And there'll be another 5 or 6 games. So he's playing close to 30 games his first year out of high school. Our players are struggling to play more than 12 games. So I see that there's not a clear pathway. You take David, who's another example going forward. I can remember Todd Blackadder talking to me and said, "Oh, you've got big reps on David Havili." And David was having a pretty average game for Nelson this day, because he obviously knew Todd was there watching him. And he made a brilliant break down the sideline, scored an incredible try. Now, all wingers are scoring those tries with it up in the air, putting the ball around to score. David scored a spectacular try. So on the back of that, he gets watched. He makes the Tasman Marco team. So full season club rugby, 10 games with Tasman Marco. We make the semi-finals and finals, which is even more exciting. And then he makes the Crusader team as a young rookie player. So in that year, he's playing 30 games. And the following year, he played all the Crusaders games as a young rookie, all the Marco games. So he's had a step up through club rugby, through age group rugby, through club rugby, through Modern 10 rugby, through Super Rugby, through Modern 10 rugby. And he's clocked in 90 games of rugby. I reckon I'm probably missing another 10 of rugby. The counterparts in Australia, they don't get that opportunity. So I can speak with a little bit of authority. My son played first 15 for Newington, one of the better rugby schools in Australia. Their season was basically 6 matches. If he's playing for Nelson College, he's got 18 matches plus a final. So I think they don't get enough rugby. And then that leads you to the point that you made when you said they're in the match for 80% of the game in the final, but they fall away. I think it's when the pressure goes on, and because they haven't played enough game of rugby, they're not used to that pressure being for 80 minutes. Okay? So as the pressure comes on, the lack of, if I take some of our young players here, they would have played, say, 15 games of rugby, maybe 20 last year, if best. Why, you take a Mitchell Hunt, he's playing 30 plus games of first class rugby a year. Okay? So it's just that completely different. He's played that for close to 5 years. That's the way I look at it.
It's a great point you make then, because I didn't take into consideration, didn't even realise that there was that discrepancy between how many games the guys play.
I think David Rennie does it the best when he talks about Noah, the young Wallaby 5'8", making the Wallabies, and then he compares them to Richie. And at that same time, Richie was trying to make the Wallabies. I know they're a little bit apart, but it was over a 3-year period. Richie played something like 90 games of first-class rugby, including the Super, while Noah had played 15 games of Super Rugby.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just too great. I think young Noah is one of the best talented rugby players Australia have got.
Yeah, they've got a lot of talented players in the squad at the moment. The Western Force for the upcoming season 2023, Tony, are you confident your roster's looking pretty solid?
So I believe we've got a really good group of 26, 27 players. And I think we can challenge with those 27 players, maybe pushing it to 30. And then Simon and the coaches are working really hard on that younger group to make sure that they can come through. So I'm confident in the preparation of the coaching group. I'm confident that we've got pretty much a settled squad, and I'm confident that we can compete. What I'm not confident is if we got a rash of injuries and we've lost 10 to 12 players. And I think that affects every team in Super Rugby except for the Brumbies and the Crusaders and the Blues. All the teams just don't have that incredible depth. And we only have to look last year and say the Hurricanes, they had incredibly talented players, but they went through a whole range of different halfbacks and first 5/8s that affected their performances. So I'm really confident that Simon and the coaching group will make the players better and make them better every minute, every hour, every day, and every week. And I'm really confident that they're going to do that. And I'm confident the players want to learn, want to grow. And I'm confident we've got a really good group that can compete. Touch wood, we don't get any injuries.
Yeah, of course, you've got a pretty fervent supporter base too. The Blue Army, do you call them over there? They get fired up. They're great support by the looks of it.
Yeah, there's no doubt to see the Blue are a great supporter base of the Western Force, and they weren't just here previously. They were there through Global Rapid Rugby that Andrew and Nicola drove, which was a great concept, and they've come back and they're supporting us at the moment. So if I'm being really frank from a financial perspective, we have to get crowds of 14 to 15,000 per game. So that requires the Blue Army, the Sea of Blue, plus another 10,000 people for us to compete.
Yeah, the enormous success of the Women's Rugby World Cup over in New Zealand, Tony, especially the way the Black Ferns, the style of rugby the Black Ferns play. What is the state of women's rugby in Western Australia? Is that do you have a competition there at the moment?
Yeah, we do. So I think we've got 8 teams in the senior women's competition, 2 new ones from this year. So we've got a good base, and we have a good group of talent. There is a real family connection in our team. So last year was the first year they've been part of the Western Force. So this year's the second time. We were the first team in Australia to pay our girls. So last year we paid them not a significant amount of money, but enough to cover petrol costs, etc., etc. This year they'll get paid, and they'll get paid significantly to play. And we have recruited quite heavily in that space. We've made a couple of interesting calls. We've recruited Claudia Bell as the first high performance manager in Australia at a super level, as a Super W. And we've just recently announced, actually I can't say that because we haven't announced, but we'll be announcing pretty soon a West Australian legend player and captain. He'll be stepping in to coach the team this year.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, just a whole new theatre of dreams has opened up, hasn't it, really, with what happened over in New Zealand for those magic few weeks?
Yeah, look, it was fantastic to watch. I know quite a few of those girls from my time in Tasman, and it was good to watch them play. But probably what impressed me more was where Australia come from. Australia were losing to Japan and America and the USA before the tournament. To reach the quarterfinals is a magnificent achievement. I know that we have to invest heavily in women's rugby in the next couple of years. We've got to work out that massive amount of talent, not only in the men's game that we lose to league, but it's also in the girls' game. Because I think if we can get that right, we've got a very good chance in our own backyard of winning a World Cup in the female space. So I'm quite excited where we are. Our group's now been training for a couple of months. I think with the coaching group and the coaching set up, it'll work. And we've actually started to recruit into the region as well. So the girls this year have got the Super W games, but they've also got pre-season games against South Australia and also the Rebels. So they've got 3 double headers with the men's team as well.
Fantastic. Well, Tony, we wish you all the very best, you and the Western Force, for the coming season in 2023, and you'll be my Aussie team I'll be supporting. My family lives over in WA, so like I say, I wish you all the best, and hopefully we can do regular interviews with not only yourself but some of your players during the season, and we'd look forward to that.
Yeah, no problem whatsoever. I can link you up with Kobe to make that happen. But I feel privileged to have the role. It's exciting, and if we can stay the course and not devour ourselves, I think we can compete this year.
Fantastic. All the best. Thank you, Tony.